What is going on, everyone? It is me, the Lone Vault Wanderer, and 2017 has been a very interesting year for games. We are about midpoint in 2017 now, and towards the latter end of this year, we have a bunch of great, awesome AAA releases, especially in the month of October, and especially on the day October 27, where we have Assassin's Creed Origins, Super Mario Odyssey, and Wolfenstein 2 on the same day. But because we are almost in the exact middle of this year, I thought it would be a good idea to look back at all of the games that I've played in 2017 so far and listing my top 5 games. Now, of course, I have not played every single game that's released so far in 2017, and I also don't own every single console available. So I do encourage all of you in the comments below, please list your personal top 5 games of 2017 so far. But until then, here are my top 5 best games of 2017 so far. Let's get into it. Number 5, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Now, I'm not going to try and sit here and convince all of you that I actively had a fun and enjoyable time playing Resident Evil 7, because that couldn't be further from the truth. Especially if you watch my Resident Evil 7 streams on Twitch, you would all know that at so many different occasions while playing this game, I got frustrated. At so many different occasions, I got salty. And at so many different occasions, I got absolutely scared shitless playing Resident Evil 7. This is the game I got frustrated with, this was a game that I was fearful with, and I was on edge at every single moment. However, that was the entire point of Resident Evil 7. It is a game that was meant to fuck with you intentionally. It was a game that was meant to get you scared and was meant to be annoying. From the very first moment that you enter that dark house in search of your wife, you are always checking behind your back to see whether something is creeping up on you. From the moment that you encounter your wife and the family, especially daddy, because he wouldn't fucking die, you are always trying to defend yourself and you're always trying to run and hide to ensure that you're not killed. And yes, you're going to get killed a lot in Resident Evil 7. It's just going to happen. Maybe I suck at games, that's probably true, but even if you are good at games, you will die a lot in Resident Evil 7. But because of the frustrating nature of that game, when you finally kill that mini-boss, when you finally kill those enemies, or if you do successfully run and hide from someone chasing you, it is such a satisfying feeling. If games like Dark Souls have taught us anything, is that while people don't necessarily like playing frustrating games that are very, very hard, what they do like is the sense of satisfaction and triumph after you overcome those hard challenges, and Resident Evil 7 certainly does succeed in that regard. Additionally, the combat is fun, the weapons are fun, the puzzles are fun, and I was always intrigued with the story too. Being someone that hasn't necessarily played much Resident Evil in the past, this was a story that was very intriguing from the get-go, and of course I'm not going to post any spoilers, but it's one that keeps you intrigued throughout the entire game. So if you do like hard, scary horror games that give you a sense of triumph once you succeed all of those challenges inside of the game, I do recommend Resident Evil 7 Biohazard for you. Number 4, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now, Mario Kart 8 of course is a re-release of a Wii U game onto the Nintendo Switch. However, it is still a 2017 release, and I had so much fun playing this game. I put about 40 hours into Mario Kart 8, and it is honestly such a blast to play. My last experience of Mario Kart was Mario Kart 64 on the Nintendo 64, and just being able to relive my Mario Kart nostalgia, coupled in with all the new characters, coupled in with all the new kart designs, and items and tracks, all of the new features in comparison to past Mario Kart games, were an absolute breath of fresh air, and I absolutely loved playing it. I think one of the best features about Mario Kart 8 too is the fact that it has a lot of different tournaments that you can participate in, such as 50cc, 100cc, and the all-dreaded 200cc. And the reason why I really like this structure is that it gave you a sense of purpose while playing Mario Kart. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of games like Mario Kart that don't have any structure towards it, but when you play through Mario Kart 8 and through all of the CCs, the game very clearly and easily shows your progression. Every time that you beat a cup, you get a trophy. Every time you beat a cup and obtain first place in every single one of the 4 races, you get 3 stars and a trophy. And because of that dynamic, it made me want to play through every single cup at every single CC and obtaining first place in every single race consecutively. Which is what I did. I played 50cc, 100cc, 150cc, reverse, and 200cc, getting all of the trophies for all of the cups and 3 stars for every single one. And that took me around 40 hours to do. That sense of progression and completion was absolutely fundamental to me playing Mario Kart 8 for as long as I did. It wasn't just the fact that it was fun, but the game told me where exactly I was at, what my current progression was, and what exactly I needed to do to effectively beat the game. And while this doesn't necessarily apply to the lower CCs, 150cc reverse and 200cc are some of the most challenging times that I've had in video games, especially 200cc, but it was so much fun. When you're being overtaken by the computers and have a red shell in hand, use it against them and cross the line before they do. Or taking a shortcut at the right time to be able to win the race. There are so many times that I just sit and smiled while playing Mario Kart 8. And if you do own a Switch, of course, you probably own it, but I must highly recommend it to you if you don't. Number 3, Outlast 2. Now, this was a bit of a surprise for me in that it was actually a good, solid game. Much better, in my opinion, than the previous Outlast. But I do need to preface all of this by saying this at the outset. Outlast 2 is a messed up game. It is a very, very messed up game. It deals with so many dark themes and subject matter that I can only recommend it to people, 1, that are adults, and 2, that are certainly not squeamish and don't mind that kind of dark storytelling. I'm not even going to mention what this game delves into because it's a lot of messed up stuff. However, if you can get past that, Outlast 2 is a fun game with a very interesting story. I'll first focus on the gameplay. Very similar to the previous Outlast, Outlast 2 has you defenseless with a camera, and the only way that you can progress through the game is by running, hiding, and sneaking your way through the dark. Any enemy that you encounter is likely going to kill you, so the game is certainly a challenge in that regard. However, what I do like in comparison to the previous Outlast is that it did not really focus on the horror elements and the jump scare elements as its counterpart did. Rather, this game really focuses on the story itself, which I honestly enjoyed a lot. It had this interesting mechanic of telling you a story in current time and also contrasting that with a story that you experienced as a child. This was really cool to me and kept me intrigued because as you played the game and experienced the main story, as interesting as that was, what was also interesting were the flashbacks that you had as you played the main story that described something very dark that happened to you as a child and particularly your friend at school. The two stories contrasted well and they were both interesting enough that kept me intrigued throughout. The game didn't necessarily have a big twist, and while I am a big fan of huge twists that surprise you, the game still ended on a somber note that I enjoyed. And there were still some small aspects put in there that I won't spoil, but kept you very curious as to what actually happened throughout the game. And another great aspect about Outlast 2 is that it's a pretty short game. If you're just focusing on the main story, it'll take you around 7 to 8 hours to complete. And I absolutely love games that do this because it means you can pretty much finish it in 1 or 2 sessions, and it won't be something that's dragged out over a couple of weeks. So certainly, if you are a fan of horror games and you do like interesting stories that delve into some messed up stuff, I would recommend Outlast 2 to you, but just bear in mind, it's a very passive game in the sense that there's no shooting, there's no killing of enemies, you've just got to survive, and that's the beauty of it. Number 2, Prey. So Prey was always going to be a game that I absolutely loved because I'm a huge fan of games like BioShock, and as you play Prey, you can instantly tell that this game was influenced by BioShock and other games like Deus Ex. Again, we'll focus on gameplay and story. First of all, the gameplay is genuinely fun. Now here's the interesting thing though. I've only played through Prey once, and I never used one alien neuromod. I do have experience with using the alien neuromods when I played the demos. However, when I played through the main retail version, I only stuck to human neuromods. This was for a reason that I'm not going to spoil now, but I'm just letting you know when I talk about gameplay, my experience is really focusing on that and the weapons. But with that being said, this game had really fun and interesting gameplay. The glue gun is definitely the standout here. It's a gun, again, that's not necessarily meant for you to kill people with, but it's very versatile. You can use it to slow down enemies, you can use it to stop flames that are protruding out of the wall and pipes, you can also use it to climb to areas that otherwise you wouldn't have access to. The glue gun was an absolute blast to use, and there was always a use for it no matter what point you were at in the game. But then there are more active weapons. You've got a wrench, you've got a silenced pistol, and you've got a shotgun, which are all very traditional but still fun weapons to use. And then when you finally get the Q-beam, it's an absolute blast. It essentially just shoots a beam of energy towards your enemies, and it's probably one of the most enjoyable weapons in the game. Then one of the very cool weapons are the recycler charge, where if you throw it, your enemies essentially get sucked into this vortex and it makes them disappear. And this grenade can also be used to get rid of things in the way of doorways, for instance. So all around, even if you don't pick up any alien neuromods, which are the more fun kind of Bioshock plasmid style of abilities to use, this game still has a lot to offer in terms of weapons and accessories. But now getting into where I think Prey absolutely shines, and that has to be one, the world of Talos. Talos Space Station is absolutely beautiful. When you're in there from the get-go, it's very intriguing, you don't know why you're there, but once you finally explore Talos in full, it's a really cool space station that just encourages you to explore. Also as well, if you ever do delve into space, that's possible too with your jetpack. It is such a beautiful sight to see the Earth and to see Talos 1 just floating in space. And then second, where I really think Prey shines, is the story. While I'm not the biggest fan of the ending, I'll say that right now, Prey still has a very intriguing and interesting narrative, and it does a really great job of teasing just the right amount of information as you play the game to keep you interested, to keep you guessing, and to keep you really confused as to what is going on. Then characters come along and put even more doubt in your mind. Then quests come along that put even more doubt in your mind. Really, until you finish Prey, you always suspect that there's something weird going on, and that the world of Talos isn't necessarily right, but you still don't know. And the worst thing, after you finish the game, again no spoilers, it makes you wait until the end of the credit sequence, which takes about 4 or 5 minutes to tell you the actual twist. And again, while I don't really like the ending, I think it could have been executed much better. It was still an amazing build up towards that moment. So for anyone that is a fan of games like Bioshock and games that have interesting twists like Prey does, I do encourage you to play it. Number 1, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So I'll pretty much admit this right now, unless another game comes out this year that is absolutely perfect in every single regard, I think Breath of the Wild is going to be my out and out favorite game of the year in 2017. Breath of the Wild is an amazing, phenomenal experience. It really is. Now I will say at the outset, this game has its problems and it's not perfect. In fact, it is not the most favorite Zelda game that I've played. That's still going to be Ocarina of Time, and at a very close second, it will be Majora's Mask. So to point out some of its problems, for instance, I miss dungeons. I really do miss dungeons. There are only 4 divine beasts in the game, which are essentially Breath of the Wild's versions of dungeons, but you can finish them so quickly and they're not much of a challenge. Also as well, because dungeons are replaced by divine beasts, Nintendo tried to have a shrine system where there are 120 shrines throughout the world of Breath of the Wild, and through discovering them you can get things like more hearts and more stamina. However, I found that after about the 30th or 40th shrine, they became a bit tedious, and I was wondering why I was finishing all these shrines. I didn't necessarily get the purpose of it. Really, there was no other reason to complete shrines other than to get hearts and stamina. And that wasn't the purpose of dungeons in past Zelda games. Dungeons acted as actual progression, meant to progress you through the game and finish the game itself. They were certainly tied into the main story and not something side that you could or could not have done. But with those 2 major negatives out of the way, I do have to say that Breath of the Wild is still a fantastic game. The sense of exploration is amazing. The world is so beautiful, it's so open, it's so free, it makes you want to explore, it makes you want to discover every single area. The landscapes are amazing, the structures are amazing, the different biomes are incredible. You have a desert area, you have a forest area, you have a water area, you have beautiful beaches. It's just such a well put together map and a well put together world, and I absolutely loved the open world / open air aspect of Breath of the Wild. really the name of the game does it justice. And then there's just so much to do in the game. While for another negative, I do think side quests are a bit of a letdown. There are still a bunch of side quests you can do. There are still a bunch of weapons you can pick up. There's still a bunch of armor and clothes that you can pick up, all of which are upgradable by several amounts. Cooking is so much fun. Again, there are 120 shrines to complete. You have to unlock all of the memories of Link, which tells you what happened before you lost your memory. There's really just a ton of stuff to do, and even after putting 100 hours into this game, there's still more that I haven't done and probably will never actually completely finish. It's just one of those open-ended games that you can always go back to even after taking a month's break, which I did, and still find something new to do, still find a new area to explore, still find new people to meet, and new weapons that you haven't used yet. And speaking of weapons, the combat in the game is absolutely enjoyable. I know not many people like the fact that weapons break. However, I think this was absolutely crucial for the game because it forced you to use many different types of weapons. If we only had one weapon that didn't break and we came to like, we would only use that and not anything else the game offered. So by making weapons break, the game forced you to mix it up. The game forced you to use a thunder sword, or to use a boomerang, or to use a spear. Weapons that normally you wouldn't otherwise use, but if you're caught in the midst of battle, you have to pull out something. And the same goes for shields, and the same goes for arrows too. Arrows are fun, you've got fire, ice, and the like. Bomb arrows are an absolute blast to use. There are a ton of different enemies in the game that all respawn after blood moons. There's really so much to talk about this game that I simply can't do it justice. But it's an epic adventure. The story is simply cookie cutter like every other Zelda game that we've played in the past, so it's not that interesting in the grand scale of things. However, it's this sense of adventure, it's the fact that you're on a massive quest to kill Ganon. It all comes together so beautifully in this game. And if you're a fan of Zelda, or if you're even just a fan of open world games and adventure games, I highly recommend Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild to you. So anyways, Waysanders, those are my top 5 favorite video games of 2017 so far. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Again, please share your favorite top 5 video games of 2017 so far. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, this has been the Lone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.